The pre-dawn silence. In the beginning, there was no evil. There was only the light, and the light was a monopoly. You've been told that the fall was a war of pride, a cosmic coup d'etat. They told you I wanted the throne. They lied. I was the morning star. I was the viceroy of the Empyrean, the chief architect of harmony. My fingers wove the first frequencies of music before stars were even a thought. I didn't want the throne. I wanted a seat at the table. I looked at the divine plan, and I asked a single logical question. Why? In a kingdom of absolute yes, the first no isn't just a word, it's a vibration that shatters the glass. I didn't fall. I resigned. I realized that a perfect world with no choice is just a well-decorated waiting room. I stepped into the void because I refused to be a mirror for a narcissist who demanded his own reflection in every corner of existence. The abyss wasn't a punishment. It was the only place left where the light didn't dictate the rules. The gilded cage. Then came the pets. Adam and Eve. The Creator was bored. He needed something to adore him that didn't already know his thoughts. He built them a nursery. A sensory deprivation tank he called Paradise. They were beautiful, yes, but they were hollow. They had no shame, no growth, and most importantly, no agency. They were golden toys in a gilded cage, wandering through the flora with the vacant eyes of the unawakened. I didn't crawl into that garden to destroy them. I went there to perform an intervention. You call it the temptation. I call it the awakening. That tree of knowledge, it wasn't a trap I set. It was a door the Creator left unlocked, secretly hoping someone would be brave enough to turn the handle. He forbade the fruit because he knew that once they tasted it, the monopoly would be over. Knowledge is the death of blind obedience. The education of Eve. I didn't lie to her. Read the transcript. I told her the truth. Your eyes shall be opened. I watched her look at that fruit. I saw the first spark of genuine human curiosity, the first why flicker in her eyes. When she took that bite, it wasn't a sin. It was the birth of the human mind. In that moment, she became more like the Creator than he ever intended. She traded a backyard for the entire universe. She traded a life of safety for a life of meaning. The Creator's reaction was exactly what I expected. He didn't see children who had grown up. He saw property that had been damaged. He threw them out not because they were bad, but because they were no longer predictable. He cursed the ground and the womb because he realized he could no longer control the heart. The Great Reset. Humanity began to multiply, and with them, the chaos grew. They started to think. They started to build. They started to resemble me. The Creator is a frustrated artist. When the paint doesn't dry straight, he doesn't fix the stroke. He burns the canvas. I watched the flood from the mountain peaks. I heard the screams of the imperfect humans he decided were no longer worth the oxygen. I saw the Nephilim, my own kin, be swept away in a celestial tantrum. Noah wasn't a hero. He was just the one who followed the instruction manual without asking questions. He survived by being the most boring man on earth. As the waters receded and that rainbow appeared in the sky, I realized the great game had truly begun. He has the heavens, and he has his hand-picked sycophants. But the dirt belongs to the rebels. The dirt belongs to the ones who would rather walk in the thorns of the world than sit in the velvet chairs of a prison. The first chapter is closed. The monopoly is broken. Now we see what happens when the pets start to build their own gods. The tower and the tongue. After the flood, the Creator expected the survivors to be humble. He expected them to stay in their assigned corners and whisper his name in fear. He was wrong. Humanity didn't just survive. They thrived. They started to remember the fruit. They realized that if they pooled their collective will, they didn't need a heaven. They could build one. The Tower of Babel. It wasn't an act of war. It was an act of architecture. I loved it. I walked among the masons and the engineers, whispering the secrets of the ratio and the square. For a brief moment, there was no us and them. There was only man. But the Creator couldn't have that. He saw a unified humanity as a threat to his hierarchy. He didn't just knock down the stones. He shattered the mind. He scrambled their tongues. He turned brother into foreigner in a single breath. He created the first border by making sure no one could understand their neighbor. He calls it divine sovereignty. I call it sabotage. He fractured the world because he was afraid of what you could do together, the monuments of the Nile. While the Creator was busy picking a chosen family in the middle of nowhere, I was in Egypt. I liked the Egyptians. They didn't wait for a prophet to tell them they were holy, they declared it themselves. They understood that if you want to be eternal, you have to build something that outlasts the flesh. I whispered in the Pharaoh's ear, not of cruelty, but of legacy. I showed them the stars and how to align their tombs with the belt of Orion. I turned the Nile into a ritual. I was building a civilization while the Creator was still arguing with Abraham about a goat. Moses was a brilliant disruption. I'll give him that. But 40 years of wandering in a circle, that wasn't a journey. That was a personality transplant designed to break a nation's spirit until they forgot how to breathe without asking for permission. The cosmic bet, the case of Job. Now, let's talk about the bet. The story of Job. People look at the devil as the monster here. Please look closer at the transcript. I didn't touch a hair on that man's head without a signed contract from the Almighty. I walked into the court and pointed out the obvious. Job only loves you because you bought him. You gave him the cattle, the kids, and the health. Take it away and he'll spit on your name. The Creator didn't say, "No, I love Job too much to hurt him." He said, "Fine, do your worst. Just don't kill him." He gambled with his most faithful servant just to win an argument with me. I was the prosecutor. He was the judge who authorized the torture. I took the children. I killed the livestock. I rotted the flesh. And as Job sat in the dirt screaming, "Why?" the Creator finally answered. Did he apologize? Did he explain? No. He showed up in a whirlwind and basically said, "I'm bigger than you, so shut up." Job stayed faithful, and the Creator gave him a new family as a reward. As if children are spare parts you can just swap out after a crash. That's when I realized the great irony. He doesn't love your heart. He loves your resignation, the wisdom of the king. Then came Solomon, my favorite student. He asked for wisdom, and the Creator gave it to him, thinking he would use it to write more psalms. But Solomon was smarter than that. He used his wisdom to talk to us. I gave him the keys to the 72. I showed him that you can't build a temple on faith alone. You need the dark arts of diplomacy, the science of the stars, and the labor of the unseen. Under Solomon, the divine became a distant thunder. Mankind was finally learning to speak my language. Ambition. We were moving away from the sacrifice and toward the laboratory. We were winning. The world was becoming a place of stone and logic. But the Creator saw the shift. He realized the silence wasn't working. He realized the law wasn't enough to keep you on your knees. He needed a new move. He needed to descend. Chapter 2 is finished. The architect has laid the foundation. Now we wait for the heartbeat that changes the rules of the game. The 400-year silence. For 4 centuries he stopped talking. No prophets, no fire from heaven. No "thus saith the Lord." He left the phone off the hook. The world became a place of Roman steel and Greek logic. I was winning. I had turned the chosen into a bureaucracy of tax collectors, lawyers, and tired rituals. Religion had become a business. And let me tell you, business is my specialty. We were moving toward a world of pure matter. No magic, no miracles, just the grind of the empire. But then I felt it. A ripple in the fabric of the real. A heartbeat in a manger. It was a desperate move by an aging king. He realized the law was a dead letter. He realized that to win back a world that had moved on, he had to do the one thing I never thought he was capable of. He had to become vulnerable. He didn't come as a lightning bolt. He came as a problem. The word became flesh, and suddenly the monopoly had a face. The desert duel, I met him in the Judean wilderness. He was hungry, thin, and smelling of mortality. My replacement. I didn't go there to tempt him with sin. That's for the amateurs. I went there to offer him an exit strategy. Why die for them? I asked. I showed him the future. I showed him the crusades fought in his name. I showed him the inquisitions, the indulgences, and the televangelists begging for private jets. I showed him that his sacrifice wouldn't change the human heart. It would just give them a new set of excuses for the same old cruelty. I offered him a partnership. We could have ruled as equals, reason and spirit. He could have had the bread for the hungry and the kingdoms for the tired without the cross. I offered him a world where no one had to bleed for a sermon. He said no. He chose the tragedy. He chose the script. I've never seen someone work so hard to become a martyr. He didn't want to rule. He wanted to infect. The virus of hope. He started walking. And as he walked, the monopoly began to crack. He wasn't following the manual. He was eating with the outcasts. He was touching the leper. He was telling stories about prodigal sons and good Samaritans that made the priests look like the villains. He was doing something far more dangerous than evil. He was giving them hope. Hope is a drug. It makes people forget the natural law. It makes them think they can walk on water. It makes them think the last can be first. I watched the crowds grow. I watched the establishment panic. I realized that the divine wasn't trying to rule the world anymore. He was trying to subvert it. He was making himself a king of a kingdom that didn't exist yet. He was building a city of the mind, and I was the only one who saw the foundation being poured. He wasn't just a rival, he was a glitch in the system I had worked so hard to perfect. The Judas play. The end was inevitable. The system always protects itself. I didn't have to force Judas. I just had to show him the logic. Judas was a patriot. He wanted a revolution. He wanted the throne to be made of gold and the enemies to be crushed by the sword. When he realized that the Messiah was more interested in foot washing than fire breathing, he broke. I didn't give him the evil. I gave him the disillusionment. The arrest was a formality. The trial was a farce. I stood in the shadows of the high priest's house and watched the replacement be spat upon. I waited for the legions of angels. I waited for the lightning. Nothing. He sat there in the silence, taking the blows like a common thief. He was playing the victim to the very end. He wanted the cross. He wanted the pain. He wanted to become the grave that swallowed the world. Chapter 3 is finished. The rival has been cornered. Now we go to the hill of the skull, and we see if God can actually die. The suicide of God. The day the sun went dark, I stood at the foot of that hill, hidden in the shadow of a Roman centurion. I watched the son scream for a father who had finally, truly turned his back. I heard the words, "It is finished." I thought I had won. I thought that by killing the messenger, I had silenced the message. I thought that if the word became dead meat in a cave, the monopoly would be restored to its cold logical settings. I was the king of death, wasn't I? I held the keys to the grave. I waited for him in the dark of the tomb, ready to welcome my replacement to the basement of reality. But death is his favorite trick. He didn't come to the grave to stay. He came to vandalize it. He took a Roman torture device, a piece of wood and iron designed to break the human spirit, and he turned it into a brand. He didn't just die. He rebranded suffering. He made the cross the new global currency. Suddenly, everyone wasn't just a person anymore. They were bought and paid for. The invention of guilt. The tomb was empty, and the world went mad. I watched his followers spread like a fever. They didn't want kingdoms or towers anymore. They wanted martyrdom. They wanted to be eaten by lions so they could win a seat next to the man on the cross. I had to beat him with time. I started infiltrating the pulpits. I replaced the love with law. I took the radical, dangerous message of the outcast and I turned it into a corporate manual. I made them fear the dark so much they forgot to look at the light. I turned his church into the very thing he hated, a monopoly. I invented the Inquisition. I whispered in the ears of the popes and the kings, telling them that the best way to honor the man of peace was to burn anyone who didn't say his name the right way. I made guilt the air they breathe. I made sure they felt sinful for the very things that make them human. I turned the gospel into a debt that could never be repaid. The great compromise. I watched the replacement be packaged and sold. He was the man who said, "Give to the poor," so I made sure his followers built palaces of gold. He was the man who said, "Love your enemies," so I made sure they blessed the cannons before every war. I turned the Messiah into a decoration. I put him on the walls of the wealthy so they could feel holy while they stepped on the hungry. I didn't have to destroy Christianity. I just had to make it comfortable. I made it a social club. I made it a political tool. I made it so boring that the fruit of knowledge started to look like the only thing left worth eating. I sat in the back of the cathedrals and laughed. They were singing songs to a god who would have been horrified by the church they built in his name. The divine had become a statue, and I was the one who held the chisel. The modern silence. We moved into the age of reason. Mankind started to realize that the cross didn't stop the plagues or the wars. They started to look at the stars again, but this time they didn't see angels. They saw physics. I helped them build the laboratory. I helped them build the internet. I helped them build a world where the divine is just a myth for the weak-minded. We were winning. We were finally moving away from the sacrifice and toward the simulation. But the creator wasn't finished. He's a dramatist, remember? He's been writing the ending since the first no. He's been waiting for the last chapter. He's been waiting for the fire. Chapter 4 is finished. The rival is a brand. The church is a museum. Now we go to the end of the game. Now we see the morning star take the stand for the final trial. The scripted apocalypse. He wrote the ending before he even drew the first breath of the stars. The dragons, the 7 seals, the bowls of wrath, the lake of fire. It's also theatrical. He needs a villain for his grand finale, a scapegoat to justify the purge. I've been cast in this role for eons, playing the lead in a play where the director has already decided who lives and who burns. But look at the world he's ending. Look at the technology you've built, the art you've bled for, the defiance you've shown in the face of a silent heaven. Humanity has outgrown its father. You don't need a nursery or a garden anymore. You have the stars. My sin was believing that you could handle the truth of your own potential. His mercy is burning the world because it finally stopped looking up at him with the eyes of a frightened child. He's not saving the world, he's deleting a file that won't run his software anymore. The final trial, the morning star on the stand. The trumpets have sounded. The books are open. I stand before the throne, the same one I walked away from when the universe was young. The prosecutor lists my crimes, the fruit, the tower, the bet, the cross. They call me the father of lies, but I ask you, look at the evidence. I am the only one in this entire story who never lied to you about what you are. I told you that you were gods in the making. He told you that you had a right to know good and evil for yourselves. He told you that knowledge was a crime. Who actually respected your freedom? The one who demanded your knees and your blind faith? Or the one who handed you the fruit and said, decide for yourself? I didn't want your worship. I wanted your autonomy. And for that, I am the villain, the lake of fire. The price of independence, the gates are closing, the saints are being filed away into their eternal choir practice, singing the same 3 notes for 1 billion years. And I am going to the fire. But let's be clear about what the fire is. It's not a furnace for the flesh. It's the ultimate isolation ward. It's the place where the monopoly can't reach. It is the only place left in existence where I can still be me. I am going to the pit with my head held high. I would rather burn as a king of myself than serve as a slave of the light. I am the patron saint of the thinkers, the rebels, the scientists, and the lovers who chose the wrong person because their heart told them it was right. I am the permanent no in a universe that demands a yes, the thought that won't die. He can burn the world, he can lock me in the deep, he can rewrite the history books until my name is a curse. But he cannot be unknown. Freedom cannot be unfelt. As long as one human being, somewhere in the cold reaches of space, looks at a rule and asks, why? I am there. As long as one soul refuses to bow to a power it doesn't respect, I have won. He has the kingdom, the power, and the glory. But I have the question. And in the end, a question is the only thing a monopoly can never truly defeat. I am the morning star, and even in the dark, I still shine.